Greetings, everybody. Nick DiVirgilio here, Sweetwater Studio A, hanging out with the great Matt Halpern from Periphery. How you doing, man?
I'm great.
It's exciting to have you here. You did a little bit of playing, some playthrough stuff, talking about your signature snare drum, which is great. But we're here right now to talk drums and maybe have you teach me some things. You've had a long career as an educator along with being in your band. So can you talk about that just a little bit before we get into playing?
Sure. Yeah, I've been teaching since I can remember. I mean, when I was 18 years old, I was just like teaching to kind of start paying the bills as I was going to college and stuff like that, and just teaching like family friends. Sure. But I loved it. And I don't know if there's probably a lot of fans or people that are watching that have no idea, but even before I joined Periphery, I was really passionate about the idea of connecting fans of music and fans of specific bands with the artists that they loved in those bands, because I kept seeing more. This was kind of prior to social media being a big thing.
Right.
I kept seeing like there was no way for like fans of music to connect with their favorite artists in a meaningful way, right? That involved the educational aspect. So I set out with this idea to like create a platform and hopefully like connect with enough artists that I could convince to start teaching their fans. And when I joined Periphery, as I was kind of saying to you earlier, it's like, I was like, all right, guys, I'll be your drummer. And I'm very happy with this opportunity, but at the same time, my big focus and big goal is going to be to build this teaching business kind of thing where I can help I can convince my friends in bands to share what they know and hopefully inspire more fans to pick up instruments.
Sure.
And start learning and start playing. And I think it's a way, like for me, it was like cathartic because playing music was all I did as a kid growing up. It's what I do now. It's my passion, and it's been so beneficial in every aspect of my life.
Sure.
It's been so enriching, and I just, even if it's not like what somebody ends up doing ultimately as their career, it's a great thing to have the ability to do. And who better than to learn from than someone who actually inspires you or you actually admire.
Sure.
So that was the concept. It's like, all these bands, all these artists, they got to where they are somehow. Even if they're not traditional teachers, they can share at least what they know. So that was the challenge of getting them to understand that, because many of them push back like, hey, I'm not a teacher. Like, I don't do this. I've never taught. And it's like, well, what if I just said to you, how do I play this riff? You could show me a riff or a drum part. And that was like getting them comfortable with this idea. And it just kind of grew, and it grew its own legs. And now, fast forward to this current day, we're seeing sort of, not solely because of me by any means, but we're seeing the result of things like this where, especially during the pandemic, artists who aren't usually on tour are not able to tour, and they're trying to figure out ways to pay their bills, but also still maintain a really good connection with their fans. Right. And a great way to do that is through education. And now there's so many ways and so many mediums to connect with people. So that was essentially the idea back then, and I'm still very passionate about it now. I don't, unfortunately, have as much time to do my own like one-on-one classes, but I'm still very much involved in being a clinician. I'll be at PASIC, sure. Teaching there. I'm very passionate about the education side, and it's funny, man. Like when I go on tour, especially during normal times, every single day I host a class at the venue.
Wow.
Every single day.
That's a lot.
But I love it.
That's great.
And I always looked at it as like a win-win-win for everybody involved, right? So for the pure fan, it gave them an opportunity to come to the show early, hang out, whether it's
sorry, this is an in-person class.
This is in person.
I got you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I would book classes, like before the tour, I would announce, hey, I'm coming to your city. Here's, you can book in with me. I have X amount of spots available. And I would do a group class every day. So whether it was in the trailer of our bus, I would set up in there with a pad or a small kit, or if it was in some room in the venue, I did it every day. And I'm not the only one. A lot of other artists would, do this kind of thing.
Okay.
But that was also at the core of like when I started out with Periphery, the very first tour, I was doing that. And at that time, it was like unheard of. Like no one was doing that kind of stuff. But I do it, if the next tour we do, I'll absolutely hope to be doing that every day. Because again, it's a great way for a fan to connect with their favorite artist in person. It's like a whole different sort of like backstage experience.
Sure.
But it's not just like a photo and a signature. right? It's like you get to sit down and we get to talk and we get to share things, and they get to know me in a much different way. It's a great way for me to actually educate, right? So somebody can learn something. And then for me as the artist, it's an amazing way for me to supplement my income on the road, because it's very hard to make a living as a touring musician as is. So this has been a great addition to the other things that I do to sort of pay my bills on the road. And it's a really fulfilling thing that feels genuine. And it's always the best part of the day on tour, aside from playing the show, because you get to like teach somebody and see the light bulb.
Sure.
Go, it's like, I get it. And the coolest part is now I've built so many good and like lasting relationships with so many of our fans and so many students of mine, like people that have come back for years and years and years. I know them personally. I know their families. I like have gotten to know the people that support us directly, and you really wouldn't be able to do that many other ways.
Right.
So long story short, very passionate about teaching in a number of different types of ways.
No, that's great, man. I love how you've diversified your career to help, make more money and support your family. And you're giving back to the drumming world and teaching more players how to play and creating more drummers, which is always a good thing, in my opinion.
I always had good teachers, and it was, I 100% wouldn't be able to do what I do now without people, being willing to come over and share with me.
Sure.
And when I was a kid, I had no idea like what they were charging. My dad would handle all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I didn't care about that. I was just so excited to like, what's this new record and who's this new drummer? And I learned about drummers because of the teachers that I had that were like, watch this person, here's this video, like VHS, or here's this album. And it helped me understand what was possible.
Sure.
And I was having this conversation with John from Pearl on the way over here, and it's, I can't imagine like my kid, if he chooses to be a drummer, how amazing he will be because of how much one click away he can learn, all the stuff that's available. And like, that's why like the young drummers that are coming up now, and this is probably the way it's always been, just generationally, they're amazing because of what they digest and what they're able to be exposed to.
Sure.
And it's mind blowing. It's totally crazy. And I like I was saying to him, like, I wish I had access to YouTube when I was a kid, because I'd probably be 100 times better than I am now, which would be awesome if I was, No,
I totally get what you're saying. When I was a kid, man, I had records.
Yeah.
And I just take the needle and replay the song over and over again, play along to the record. Yeah, so it's amazing how you can go back way into the early days. You can watch drummers playing from the 30s and 40s and see what they did, and go all the way up to today's drummer and just see the lineage and how it's expanded and what drummers can do from what they did back then to now. It's another world. So with all that being said, man, that's some great information. I really dig that. Can you show me some things? Say, teach me. Let's start from like a basic level.
Yeah.
If you have a new student that's kind of just starting out, hasn't been playing that long, what are some of the things you would show that particular level of a player?
So this might be a sort of unorthodox answer, but something that I truly believe is of the utmost importance at any point on the drummer's timeline, but if you can catch this at the beginning, it's great, is this idea of letting go, right? Like being uninhibited on the drums.
Okay.
And I'm sure you've seen this, like, you go to a gig and you watch a band play and you watch the drummer and you can tell that they're like in their own head. And they're stoic and there's no emotion there. And it's like, you want to love it, but it's just kind of awkward and you don't get it. And I think a lot of that tends to come from rigidity in certain teaching methods, I think, that I've been exposed to as a kid, and that like some of my other students have been exposed to, where it's just very by the book,
right?
Which is great in a lot of ways, but I also think it's really important to remind young students or beginners that this is fun.
Yeah, totally.
And like when we talk about drums, we don't say we're going to go do drums. We say we're going to go play. We're going to go play the drums. The word play should encompass the meaning of that, right? Like play, we're playing, we're having fun. So I try to instill that as the very first thing that I teach any student when I start working with them, if they don't already have that,
Right.
Ingrained in them. And some people you don't have to tell them that,
Right.
But that's very important. And then, so that idea, right, there's a bunch of different facets to it. So first off, it's just getting someone to be okay knowing that they're going to make stupid faces. And the way that I disarm them is that I, will play or show them videos and I look at my face. Like, look how, my jaw's this way and my eyes are this way and my nose is on the ceiling. And it's like, that's okay. That creates its energy, its emotion, its feeling, and people connect with that. As weird as some people think that is about themselves, as much as people get in their heads, an audience of non-musicians will connect much more and feel much more from those crazy faces than they will from someone trying to be composed. Someone who doesn't know music will watch someone who's like too composed and too stoic and be like, that just feels weird, and I don't know why. They can't necessarily vocalize why, but they can definitely say, oh, I love the drummer. He's crazy. That's why common folk loved Keith Moon, right? Or John Bonham, or these iconic drummers that just
went off.
Yeah. And it was the performance aspect, and it was just not giving a crap about what I look like, what I'm doing, I'm having fun. So there is essentially an exercise that I do, which I can tell you what to do. We could try it here if you want, but it's goofy because it's not about playing technique. It's about stretching those muscles of just like being a goofball. So what I do is, and there's levels to this, but I'll typically have them play a very basic groove. So kick on the 1 and 2 end, snare on the 2 and 4, hi-hats on the 8th note. So the groove is boot, got boot, got boot, got boot, got, right? You can play that. So when most people start playing that groove, they either can play it already, or if they can't, obviously if they're a beginner, I'll get them to that point. If you just sit down and play that and you're thinking about it, you're probably going to be like I was, like kind of stiff, a little bit stiff, But we have to loosen up, and a great way to loosen up and a great skill is being able to count out loud. But when I tell this to students initially, this is what they do. 1 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. So that's not going to do anything. You're still being reserved. So I say, make a fool of yourself. I want you to scream the 8th notes. Okay? So this is what you should be doing. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And it scares the crap out of the kid or whoever I'm teaching. But just that alone, what did you start doing?
It made me smile.
Right.
Yeah.
So just that exercise of like just loosening up does the trick. And you're developing a really great skill of being able to count a straight 8th note count while playing and this is kind of the other aspect of this whole exercise, while playing an accent on the kick drum that is on an upbeat while essentially counting downbeats.
Sure.
Which is very hard for a lot of people. And when you and I were talking before about this idea of like keeping a pulse while playing all these other rhythms, that ability stems from this. If you can vocalize a rhythm out loud and then play anything against that vocal part, then that's a whole level of coordination that you're developing internally.
Sure.
Because when you speak or when you use your voice, it's your whole body that's feeling it. And that's very important. It's a subtle thing, but it's a very important thing to teach anybody in the beginning. So that's the first part. So it's your turn.
Okay.
So, and you just need to yell out loud.
Okay.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when you do that, you can't help but loosen up.
Sure.
Even if someone's fighting it, like they're being a little tense, that you're forced right there. And you know what's funny is that extra bass drum hit that you did the first time around, that's a very common thing for most drummers when they do this exercise to do. Okay. And I usually have to be like, extra bass drum. But it's because it feels right to support the counts that you're doing with your voice, right? So it's just this little subtle thing. Anyway, so that's really the first thing. So there are other layers to this. But that, you asked the question, what is the very first thing I teach somebody when I'm working with them? It's that. And what's really interesting is that a lot of times when I work with people, they're not beginners, but they've never done this. And when I put them through this test, they've never tried it before. As soon as they actually let go and do it, like they start laughing and they feel better. And
it seems like an icebreaker.
It's a great,
especially if you have like a shy student or something
exactly.
like that. Yeah.
It's a great icebreaker. And I've watched students who have been so quiet and so in their own heads and in this little shell blossom just from starting here. And it like makes it so that they feel like they can trust me too, because I'm being a goofball. You're going to be a goofball. We've gotten that out of the way. Sure. Now let's get into the next thing. But again, it's more than just an icebreaker, because you can develop so much from being able to count out loud. And there are drummers who I know personally who have taken this to a whole nother level. I don't know if you're familiar with JP Bouvet, who's a great friend of mine. He's one of my favorite drummers of all time. And we did a lot of clinic tours together. And there was one clinic in particular where he did one of his amazing drum solos, but literally the whole time he had a microphone here and he was counting to 7 using eighth notes the whole drum solo. Didn't deviate from it at all and played everything against it perfectly. And the whole lesson was like, if you practice this type of coordination, you can do anything. And then your internal clock becomes so good that you can learn anything and you can do anything, and you don't have to spend so much time deciphering it. And it's funny enough, there was on one of the Periphery tours, I had a family issue where I had to miss the first few dates. And it all happened like 24 hours before the first show. And I couldn't do the first 3 shows. So I called JP. I was like, hey, can you like fill in? He didn't know the material. But and there's a video of this online. You can find his documentary of this where he recorded, but he, within 24 hours, learned the whole set.
And that's not easy music.
It's not easy music, but it's a testament to this kind of thing, because in order to play the style of music that I play, you have to really understand syncopation, you have to understand polymeter, you have to understand this idea of a pulse versus all of the different notes. And he is a perfect example of someone who's worked on those little fundamentals of just being able to count out loud. And that right there made him, it got him 60, 70% of the way there with a gig like that. You know what I mean? And it's just so important.
Sure.
So that's the first thing I try to put people through the paces with.
Awesome.
Something as simple as that.
Yeah.
Now that you're yelling out loud,
Right.
the next step to this is loosening up. Because although I'm vocalizing these counts, we also have to be able to move, right? Like you don't want to watch a drummer who's stiff and trying to play. It doesn't work. Even if they are yelling, it doesn't work. You need to be able to be loose, but also, more importantly, developing your internal clock and developing your, not even just internal, your outward clock, so the people watching you perform can understand where you're feeling the groove, right? So the next step to this exercise, which a lot of people have trouble with, is being able to bob your head on the quarter notes of this groove and not get thrown off by the 2 end on the kick.
Okay.
So forget the yelling for a second. Now we go, okay, let's take this groove again. Can you bob your head either up and down or left to right on the quarter notes? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, while playing that groove. Here's what typically happens the first time. They go like this. And I'm really exaggerating.
Right, of course.
You have to be able to untie that knot. A lot of times I will literally stand behind a student and I will move them as they play that groove back and forth and not let them jolt with that 2 end upbeat. But you have to it's that one little accent on the upbeat that people aren't used to moving through.
Right.
But you have to be able to move through it to play anything syncopated and keep time. So the exercise really is then just being able to play that groove and bob from left to right on the quarter notes. So like this. Or and eventually, as you get good at that movement, it can be more subtle. It doesn't just have to be like these head movements. It can be with your butt in the seat. Where you can still look cool, you know, hopefully.
Well, you look looser, even just doing it like that. You look like you're just sitting there
relaxed.
easy, yeah, relaxed.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like if you were to bounce in your seat like this and totally just let your limbs do whatever they're gonna do, if you're bouncing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and look at I'm not moving my arms right now, like on purpose. Just the bounce of the seat has them moving all in time and everything is in sync. If I then harness that and just push into it a little bit,
yeah.
then my timing and my feel is just gonna be all together. And the coolest part about all of this is that this concept is the core of how you develop your feel and your sound. Because the feel and sound you have, as much as it comes from the music you listen to and the styles you practice and what you're exposed to, as drummers, this is a physical instrument. Our physical makeups are what make us unique as people. The physical makeup is what makes us unique on the drums. And if we learn how to, in the most natural way, harness our body movements and the lengths of our arms and the lengths of our legs and how we move and just embrace it as we are and not worry about what we look like, not only do you look more relaxed, but you start to develop a sound because your body is only gonna work the way Nick's body works for you, and my body is, the way that I explain this to people is like a family member or friend. You could see walking from, 500 feet away, not see their face, but just by the way their body moves, you know who that person is.
Right.
That's the idea here,
Okay.
is that if you embrace that. So this exercise allows you over time to just develop that natural movement that your body makes and put it into the drums.
Okay.
So that's this next step. So the next step is just literally playing that groove and bobbing your head from starting on the left to the right on the quarter notes. And not playing any extra notes.
No extra beats. Okay.
And not jolting with the right foot on the 2 end.
All right.
All right, let's try it out.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why you're you. I didn't think you'd have an issue with it, so it's good. But that also, there's so many drummers that I meet who can play really fast, and their chops are amazing, and they've spent all this time working on these sort of like finite techniques, but they've never done this.
Right.
So although they might be able to play the craziest music in the world, they're not actually taking advantage of being a unique individual on the kit, nor are they necessarily able to have flow, have feel, and show the people that they're playing with how it's supposed to look and how you're supposed to feel the song, Because at different tempos and with different grooves, it might not work. Like if it's too fast, let me phrase it this way. If you're playing a groove or a part that's faster than this, what we just played, you're not gonna be going like this, that's too much. So you have to find other parts of your body to create that flow. So like kind of what we were talking about before is in my playing, even if I'm playing a complex pattern or a very syncopated pattern with lots of ghost notes or a linear pattern between my left hand and right foot on the kick, I'll maybe keep time with my hi-hat to create that sort of base of rhythm or of the groove, or it's just simply the way that I'll play the stack or the ride or the crash, creating a metronome that is sort of, using the term, untied from everything else, but still able to work with it. So when I play, there's one of the songs that you were showing me earlier from Periphery was this song called The Bad Thing. And there's a section that is really syncopated that has a pulse, but it's displaced as far as like what the pattern is doing between the left hand and the right foot. So the groove that I'm talking about goes, so that's the displaced version of that groove. If it wasn't displaced, it would sound like this. So
Yeah, it turns it from like a more of a typical halftime backbeat.
Yeah.
Those displacements of that just give it a lot of more interest, well, a lot of different, interesting life.
It's just a variation of it.
Yeah.
And you know, forgive me because I haven't played that song forever. But that part is a good example of what I'm talking about, because if you watch what I was doing, I'm consistently, even though I'm changing what I'm doing between the kick and snare, I'm keeping this pulse
Yeah, it's going
here, which is essentially that metronome, that part of the metronome. I'm also doing my left foot on the hi-hat, but then I'm also bobbing my head through it. And just the ability to stay loose throughout this chaos is what I think can, you know, to me, when I watch a drummer, as an example, like Benny Greb can play grooves like that, like it's, you know, nothing. Right. When I watch him, what I really enjoy about his playing, of course the parts are great, but it's just, he looks completely comfortable. Like he's reading a newspaper at home, you know, having a coffee. It's just, it's beautiful to watch. And that to me is my favorite thing about drummers, is when their personality shows through and they're able to just move to the music, and it's almost like a dance.
Sure.
You know, so although a part like this may be far ahead from just doot, ga, the concept is still the same, and you have to just start by untying the voice knot first, and then bobbing the head, untying that part of your body from the groove, and then doing it all together. So being able to bob your head, count out loud or scream out loud, and play that groove. And that's what really solidifies the whole thing. And then eventually you just, the whole point is that every groove you then play from then on, whatever it is. Whether it's that, or whether, because that's one way that I can bob my head with that groove, right? The slower part of that. Or I could go. You start to figure out what feels better. Are you trying to push the groove forward? If so, then you should move faster. But if you're trying to make it feel more laid back, and you want to move at a slower pace, so to me it feels better to go. Even though there's a lot of chaos underneath it, you know. So that's the idea. And typically, if I'm working with a new student, I don't expect them to be able to just play all these parts. There's a lot of other things that go into the syncopation and the specific techniques and the grooves, but you have to start somewhere. And to me, you won't be able to do any of these parts justice if you aren't relaxed in it. Like anything. You know, if you approach life in general tense all the time, then it's gonna be a bummer.
Sure.
But if you can just kind of go with the flow and try to have fun in every aspect of what you're doing, or find the good in what you're doing, you know, that's another whole part to this too, is just like, how does this translate to life?
Right.
You know, so that's the idea. The abbreviated next part of all this is then being able to actually have like the ability to play syncopated patterns. And I get asked all the time about the ghost notes, right?
Right.
which it all ties into the stuff that we were talking about first. Like being able to play what I sort of refer to as like non-linear patterns where everything is working together, where everything has a purpose. Your right hand is keeping time, your right foot is playing accents on the kick drum, or for me, my right foot. My left hand is playing the backbeats, but also it's creating motion and creating sort of textures with the ghost notes. And then my left foot is either adding accents or it's keeping time. Everything has a purpose, but in order to do that and be relaxed, I think it's very important to develop, or I should say untie the knots again between your core and then each limb one at a time, two at a time, eventually all four working together against also your body keeping the time. So the way to do that, and I always say that this is like a morbid thing, is just to pretend that you only had one limb, but you still wanted to play the drums. Let's just say we start with our left hand. Okay, so let's just say you only had your left hand and you only had a snare drum. We don't just play one-dimensionally in that we only hit the snare drum at one dynamic level and it only sounds like this. We use dynamics.
All right.
So when I think about this, what I actually try to do is I say, okay, can I play an eighth note groove just with my left hand on the snare drum? And using dynamics, can I emulate a bass drum and a snare drum? With that in mind, I would play 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and with my left hand. So just using soft hit, soft, soft, loud, soft, 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 loud. Just that right there. Now, the key here that is not just being able to develop that dynamic control, it's making sure that while you're doing that, you're actually allowing yourself to bob your head and keep time. So and if you watch the way my hand's moving, I'm not just sitting here stiff going down, up. I'm actually moving almost like using a molar stroke technique, forward, back, creating a metronome. Boom, 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 boom with the notes. And I'm just changing the height and the amount of force I'm putting behind it to make the accent. So that's the first step, is do that just with your left hand, playing an eighth note groove, right? Accenting the 2 and the 4 and keeping all the other notes somewhat soft and bobbing your head. So that would be step 1, if you want to try it.
Sure.
So just the left hand. Great.
Okay.
So what I always teach my students to do is, okay, from there, try to vary it up, right? And without getting into like the idea of composition or like, too far down the rabbit hole of improvisation, just do, 4 measures at a time of a certain groove and then change it up. But see if you can come up with different rhythms just using your left hand and different dynamics to emulate a full drum kit just on the snare, just with your left hand. You don't even need a drum set for this. You can use your leg, use a pad, whatever. But so I would do something like this. So just coming up with rhythms that groove just with the left hand, but notice how it was like
you're moving back and forth.
Rocking back and forth. So just try it, improvise, do like 4 bars or 8 bars just like that.
Okay.
Perfect.
Something like that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's step 1. And what you actually end up getting as sort of a byproduct of this is like you start to develop the physical ability to play ghost notes.
Sure.
That's not even your purpose.
Right.
Your purpose is just with your left hand to play a dynamic groove.
I must say, even just doing that little thing and just doing the head bop, I've got off for a second.
Yeah.
And I felt it. And I go, oh, okay. It made me kind of turn back around and find the center again.
Yep. And
I felt it immediately.
That's the key.
Yeah.
And as an experienced drummer, it would be very easy for you to do what you did, which is like, oh, I felt it,
Right.
I'm gonna get back on. But that's why it's so important to go through these exercises if you're trying to develop the ability to play a lot of syncopation and also be loose.
Sure.
Right? Like what we were talking about. So that's step one. And there's no rush to go from just the left hand to the next step, right? Like you don't need to do this with more limbs until you can feel very comfortable sitting there. You can do this with a pad while you watch Jeopardy or something. As long as you're bobbing and playing a groove, you could do it for the whole episode and just play grooves with your left hand, and that's it. That'll develop your dexterity, your dynamic control. If you aren't a left-handed player, you'll start to get way more dominant and you'll just feel better that way. And there's so many benefits to it.
Sure.
But then the next step, if we're talking about, like the specific roles as a right-handed, right over left drummer, the next thing we want to do is, or that I like to teach is, now we do it with the left hand and right foot. So now we're going to do the eighth notes using alternating single strokes. So rather than what we were doing with the left hand before, which is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, we're going to go snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick.
Okay.
But we work on being loose. So or we can change the placement of it, kind of make it more halftime and do something like this. That's maybe the better exercise. So it's sort of counting the 16th notes. Let's say 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and, right? So that would be the next step. So can we do that? And can you do it relaxed and still using dynamics and putting that kick drum in between? Now, the tricky part here is most people like to start grooves with the kick. But if you did that here, the accents that should be on the 2 and 4 would be on the kick drum. So it'd be like, right?
Which could be a different sort of exercise. I mean,
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I should note too, really the next step to all this isn't even going to two limbs. It's, you did this with your left hand, now do it with your right hand.
Right.
And then do it with your right foot on the kick drum. Like play a groove like this. Right? And do it with your left foot. And just get comfortable having the ability to play a groove with one drum, one limb against your body keeping the pulse, right? Okay. So that's the rule, that's the core.
Gotcha.
But now we do this with the left hand and right foot. So one E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. So that's step 2. So try that.
It takes a second to kind of just get everything sort of
placed in the right way.
Placed together and like in harmony, sort of a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and because it's not natural to start a groove with the snare drum typically as the dominant piece. And just so you know, what you were playing is extremely normal if you've never done this exercise before, because you tend to, there's a little bit of a shuffle at first, and then it gets spaced out the right way.
Right.
So, but that's why it's so important to bob on the right notes to be able to have it. And then a whole other exercise is getting that shuffle feel, but you want to make sure you can do both and have it be swung, you know, or not swung.
Right.
So then the moving down the line, instead of just playing the singles, now we would do a similar thing and just kind of improvise between the left hand and right foot.
Okay.
So. So you get the idea?
Totally.
But see how I'm moving throughout? So try it. If you want to, try that. And as you did it more, you got more and more comfortable.
Sure.
And like you're like, oh wait, I had this chop, I had this, and I can like do it comfortably. So that's what ends up happening. You just sit with it. And I'm sort of showing the abbreviated, far down the line version of this to show what's possible. But when I started with this stuff, I was doing basic rudiments. So singles, like, and then doubles, 2 on the left, 2 on the foot. And then maybe, all 16th notes, 3 on the hand, 1 on the foot. And then moving where the bass drum was, so like, so it's on the 1E as opposed to just the, the of the whole thing. But you shift it around, and again, that's sort of syncopation of the placement of the groove. So anyway, you build up all this stuff, but then the next step would be, rather than playing something linear, can you play something non-linear? So as going back to just the hands now, can you play a basic, that basic 8th note groove? And then play quarter notes on the right hand. So 8th note groove on the left, quarter notes on the right. And then eventually 8th notes on both. And then can you play 16ths on the right? And then eventually can you play accented on the 3? I mean, you can go
all over the place.
Yeah, you can go all over the place with this kind of stuff. But that's the idea, is untying the knot now, not just between the head and one limb, but now playing a pulse with the right hand or the left hand, and then loosening up the other. And eventually, you would do that same exercise where you improvise while keeping a pulse. And then eventually, you put this on top of the left hand and the right foot. I mean, all day can just go in between different limbs, and that's how people develop linear fills, linear grooves, non-linear grooves, but everything, like at any point you can say, I want to keep time with the left hand and play loose with the right, or I want to keep time with the right and play loose with left, or I want to pull out the bass drum, or I just want to do bass drum and snare. Right. But this is, these again, like you could spend a long time, 1 limb at a time, 2 limbs at a time. But that's what I recommend, is dividing it up and doing it almost methodically, of like just left hand, just right hand, right foot, left hand, left foot. And then all the 2-way combinations you can think of, and then all the 3-way combinations you can think of, and just essentially improvise or play songs you like or whatever it is, just with limited limb combinations, and even just on a kick and snare and hi-hat. You don't need a full kit to do this, or you don't even need drums to do this.
Sure. Do you find that you have to, especially maybe a younger person, to convince them or to press the point that this takes time and to enjoy the ride of this whole thing, because it doesn't happen overnight?
Totally.
You got to give it some space to kind of grow, and you got to have that patience to get to realize the next level, and to kind of say, oh man, look how much better I am
Yeah.
than I did was 7 days ago. So
Yes.
do you have to press to people that to give it a little bit of time?
I make sure to clearly explain that, and I also make the point to say playing slowly is very important. Playing slow, don't play fast. I remind them that I've been playing drums for a very long time, and I've been doing these kinds of things on the
Doesn't
daily.
Just happen overnight, right?
It doesn't, but the coolest thing about a lot of the stuff we talked about today is that within the lesson, the one lesson itself, I can, with these techniques or these concepts, I should say, I can watch the student improve instantly, right? So it's not something like I show them and they have to go then take this, and to get any sort of improvement. Just by having them play a basic groove and yell out loud is enough there to say, wait a minute, this works, and I just couldn't do that before, and now I can do this. That helps them along the journey to have faith that if they do, follow the methods, that they will reach those milestones. And again, it's like, even as something simple as just going, that's simple enough that within one lesson, I can make sure that someone who couldn't do that beforehand can do it by the end of it.
Gotcha.
And that's enough to prove that growth is possible if you practice and if you, go through the steps. But to kind of, I should disclaim this part, which is like a lot of the stuff that I'm playing and showing you today is like the abridged version of it, the quick version to get to the point of what's possible.
Sure.
But there's so many steps to it, and there's so many different ways that I could teach this depending on the student and what they're working on. Maybe they're preparing for a gig and they need to play a certain song, and the song requires a specific pattern like this. So that's where we would focus.
Gotcha.
Versus just somebody who wants to just get good at everything, then we start very basic with step one and so on and so forth. But the key and the core of all this, in my opinion, is still what we talked about at first, which is no matter what you're doing, and hopefully I led by example today by anything I played, you saw the movement and you could feel where the pulse was, and that I'm not BSing when I say like that is the most important thing to develop originality, your own sound, your own sense of feel, your ability to have your own internal and external metronome. Like that makes you into a unique drummer more than anything else, because anybody can learn patterns, anybody can play a song, but if you lined up the 10 best drummers in the world, like our favorite drummers, on the same kit in a row and had them each play the same groove, most likely they would each play it differently in the best way, because they're utilizing their bodies the way that they're supposed to utilize them. And because of that, even though the groove is just the way I play it is cool, the way you play it is cool, but it's different for everybody. And that's the core message that's so important with all this, is like it helps you develop originality. But you have to be able to let go and be a goofball and make stupid faces and not be afraid to have fun. It really is. This is fun to me, doing this stuff. This is not work.
Right.
This is play. So that's the key.
All right, Matt. Well, thank you so much for joining us at Sweetwater today.
Thank you.
Showing off your snare drum and some really cool concepts in this lesson right here. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to go back to my office and work on some of these things today. For sure. I've been playing drums a long time, and I love little things like this. Even after all the years that I've been playing, I could see how it would help me improve as a drummer even to this day. So I appreciate that very much.
Sure, yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Best of luck with the rest of your career and what you're doing with Periphery in the near future. I know some stuff is happening, so great. Best of luck with that. And come back and join us again.
I'd love to. Thank you.
Man. Thanks a lot, everybody.